All right, well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same be said about X-Men Days of Future Past? Stick around and find out. Digga digga down now meow, digga digga down now meow, digga digga down now meow, bow down bow, digga digga down now meow, digga digga down meow down, digga digga down now meow, bow bow bow, digga do gada go dagga do bada go dagga do bada go dagga do gada go dagga do gada go dagga do do be now, down now meow, digga do bow. All right, children of the '90s. That was for you. Hi, I'm Peter Franson from ChristianGeekCentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions with an uncut review of X-Men Days of Future Past. Let's see, what do we got going on here? In the near future, the tension between humans and mutants escalates into all-out war, devastating the entire planet. Giant mutant hunting robots called Sentinels have successfully captured or killed nearly every mutant. Their only hope is to send Wolverine's consciousness back to the 1970s to stop the production of Sentinels altogether. But will Wolverine's efforts do more harm than good? Well, first let's talk about the story, the script, the general pace of the thing. I love this. I love this story. There was great attention to drama. It had really nice weight to it. You know, it was very, I guess, I don't want to overuse the phrase emotionally grounded, but in many ways it was, although that emotional grounding, that emotional involvement that I felt wasn't really strong until the second half. Many of the numerous characters got good moments. You know, in X-Men 3, we saw a bunch of characters, a bunch of like third-tier characters, and nobody was really getting the treatment that they deserved, except maybe, I guess, Wolverine or something, you know? He's always going to get his cut. But I mean, in this movie, they had a lot of characters. They had a lot of like one-line cameos too, which I was surprised about. That were really cool to see. But all the other peripheral characters were really given nice moments. In terms of both drama and in terms of action and just what their character is and what they're about. Like Iceman, not a lot of drama stuff going on with that character, but he cuts loose with his powers like I've wanted to see, and probably many X-Men fans have wanted to see since day one. It was a big deal in the third movie when he covered himself with ice and was finally like being more like the Iceman we know. But oh man, he really cuts loose. He is the quintessential Iceman in this movie in terms of what he does with his powers. It's fantastic. Let's see, Kitty Pryde, played by Ellen Page. She was in X-Men 3, and this was before she did Juno and just some of the other movies that have gotten her a lot more recognition. And so they very wisely, in light of her, star power that she's gained since X-Men 3, gave her some important things to do in this movie. And she had some nice dramatic beats too, where she could flex those actory muscles. The character Blink has some real, which I'm not familiar with, but she's got some really cool powers that in this movie are used in like crazy cool ways. It made me want to drive home and like fire up Portal on my Xbox 360. I mean, it was just, I love the physics and the creativity in her use of her powers. Quicksilver, okay? If you're a fan, you knew that Quicksilver is going to be in this movie. I'm not going to spoil. I don't like to spoil, elements of the movie. I try to talk in generalities, but just talk about how they made me feel. So, you shouldn't have to fear spoilers from me. Let me just say though, Quicksilver, fantastic. Not in a ton of the movie, but when he's in the movie, it's like it's his movie. I mean, it's great. Not only in terms of his character, but in terms of what they do with super speed, how they show super speed. It just whet my appetite for the Flash TV series coming up in the fall. The time travel premise of the story kept me guessing. They spend most of the time in the dark future and the 1970s. Those are the two time periods really being dealt with for the most part. And that whole aspect of time travel, of trying to change history, of bringing two different X-Men movie casts together into one movie, it just totally kept me guessing as to where the plot was going to go. I love that feeling. Because I don't get it near as often as I would like. And it was great that up until the very end, I was like, man, I could see this going about 5 different ways from where I am right now. And I had that feeling for a lot of the movie, which was great fun. It has a serious tone, but without being cute or using kind of meta humor. Like you might remember in X-Men 3 when they made a reference to the Juggernaut meme that was going out that was on YouTube. That was kind of a YouTube sensation, and they used a line from that, and it was just kind of like too self-aware. It was this meta humor, like I said, and it just didn't. That movie was just kind of an empty movie in terms of its humor and a lot of other elements. Not so here, which it really could have been because it has so many different mutant characters that fans want to see. But yeah, it had a great dramatic weight to it, but still some jokes. It's not as funny as, like, say, the Avengers Marvel movie universe. But it certainly still has some nice little subtle gags and chuckles and stuff here and there. It just had a great tone feel all the way through. Great character motivations. There was, everybody, you understood, I think for the most part why they were doing what they were doing. But there were definitely some characters that stood out. Xavier stood out. Mystique stood out. To a certain degree, Magneto stood out, but those are like the main kind of, I would say, the dramatic roles that are really given stuff to work with. There are some minor inconsistencies in the plot or the presentation of the plot. Like Wolverine's age would be, for me, chief among them. They don't really do anything. He's graying at his temples in the future world, and like, compared to him, no one seems to be as old as they should be. They don't really tell you how far into the future it is, but you kind of just figure out as you go along, oh, it's maybe not as far in the future as this kind of, like when you see this kind of dark future world of the X-Men comics, it's usually far-flung future as far as I remember. And it really doesn't seem to be that case because there are a lot of characters that are still alive that don't have Wolverine's regenerative powers that, make him age more slowly. And, given that, and given that they've established even in the Fox Marvel movie universe, that Wolverine ages more slowly, like he was in the Civil War and all this kind of stuff, I'm asking myself, okay, well then why are his temples gray in the future and everyone else just kind of looks, maybe 10 years, 5 years older or something like that? Why is Wolverine suddenly aging more quickly, or what's going on there? So it was just kind of an odd choice that they never really explained. Maybe we'll get some deleted scenes or something that'll explain that. I don't know. There was also no help in bridging from X-Men 3 or the recent Wolverine movie to this movie. There's a shawarma scene, an extra scene during the credits at the end of the recent Wolverine movie that I thought was going to be the direct setup that would directly lead into the events of this movie. But that's not the case. And I won't explain, how or why or stuff like that, but there's just a lot of dots that you are left to connect if you want to connect this movie and this story to either X-Men 3 or to the more recent Wolverine movie. You just kind of have to figure out, okay, like one thing I wasn't satisfied about in X-Men 3 was the bonus scene at the end when, and sorry, this is a spoiler if you haven't seen X-Men 3, when Xavier comes back to life through this other body that was like brain dead since birth, and they just for some unknown reason been keeping on resuscitation for its whole life and stuff, and then Xavier kind of, after he dies, I guess takes control of that body. That wasn't really clear. I mean, but that's really a fault of X-Men 3. It's not really a fault of this movie, and maybe that's how the creators of this film felt. They're just like, well, okay, the audience knows in the bonus scenes at the end of X-Men 3 that Magneto is starting to get his powers back, and we know that somehow, even if it's never explained logically in the movie, or at least not clearly in the movie, we know that Xavier's back too. Why he would still be in a wheelchair if he's in a brand new body, they don't explain. Although my wife said, well, if it was a body that was just in a hospital all its life, then it would be all atrophied and whatever. Anyway. Sorry. Again, this movie had a lot to overcome in terms of some of the strange places that X-Men 3 left things. And I think if you're able to kind of bridge those gaps in your mind, and you're not expecting this movie to really kind of do a great job of bridging X-Men 3 to this movie, or the recent Wolverine movie to this movie, if you're not expecting that, then I think you'll be content. This movie, is its own ride, its own story for the most part, and it's a really good one. Let's see here. Casting. Let's talk about casting and the performances in general. Great cast, solid cast. Hugh Jackman, of course, back as Wolverine. He does a great job. But it's funny. This movie, I think even before I walked into this movie, I was like, I think I'm ready for the reboot on Wolverine. Hugh Jackman does a great job. I'm not saying he's not a fantastic Wolverine. He is. But I'm kind of ready for a new interpretation of the character. And maybe that's because from my limited exposure of Wolverine in basically the 90s cartoon, a few 90s mainstream Wolverine, in the comic stuff, and then the Ultimate Marvel Universe. My impression of Wolverine is that he is much more just kind of like brooding and just kind of like maybe animal-like is what I'm looking for, just in general, not just when he's going berserk. And Hugh Jackman, he brings those moments out, and he's always gruff and brooding and stuff, but he also is kind of the hero a little bit. You know what I mean? Maybe part of it is how tall he is. I don't think that's it. I think it's just, he just plays kind of the straight hero a little more often than I'm used to when I think of Wolverine in the comics. So I'm ready for a more animalistic or just kind of different take on Wolverine. That said, he still does a great job. I got no complaints. Now, James McAvoy is the standout performer in this movie. He does some great character stuff, some great dramatic stuff. Just in the delivery of his lines, there's some great natural. He just does a fine job with that character. Michael Fassbender, great. I mean, it's not like this one. He had a little bit more character drama going on in X-Men First Class compared to this movie, but he still does a great job, brings weight. He brings just that kind of steel cold persona to the role that he's just a great choice for Magneto. Ellen Page, of course, I mentioned earlier, brief but great dramatic moments. And then Evan Peters, who is a great and funny Quicksilver. Really enjoyed him. The visuals, let's talk about visuals, action, stuff like that. The visuals were cool. They were great. Now, still lots of CGI that's hit or miss to my eye. It's like, okay, yeah, there's some CGI metal things moving around or whatever, but you know what? I didn't care. I didn't care because of how those effects moments help tell the story. They said something about Magneto's immense power or what he was driven to do or whatever. Whatever was going on in the action, I felt like it was propelling the tension, the drama, or something forward. It was doing something and not just being like, ooh, look at this Michael Bay coolness, It was doing something that I really liked. The power levels, speaking of which, of these characters, holy crap. I was just reminded, especially of Magneto. Several times I was shaking my head. I was like, dude, this guy is scary powerful, And there's lots of great examples of superhero or superpowered characters in this story just cutting loose with their powers to the point where I'm thinking, frickin' look out Avengers and maybe even frickin' look out Superman. I mean, wow, these guys are powerful and really fun to watch. Great effect sequences, so satisfying, fun, and intense. As far as the music and the music goes, the score is not very memorable. They do use the classic movie X-Men theme, but mainly I think just in the opening and closing credit sequences. I don't remember it actually in the movie. I'm not even sure they brought back the Michael Fassbender Magneto theme, which is like this bass down, down, down. I think those are the intervals. I might be a little off on that, but that was just a great theme going on in X-Men First Class. And I don't think they actually brought that theme back. I could be wrong. I can't wait to see it again. But they did something like that. It was like this lower bass tone type of thing. So anyway, great stuff there in terms of the music, serving the drama and not getting in the way and saying, here's a cool musical theme, Let's see here. Okay, so in terms of like relevance, stuff that, might lead you to worthwhile thought or conversation after you're done seeing the movie. X-Men 2 and 3 seemed to me to specifically have homosexuality in mind in their scripts. X-Men classically has this theme of people not fitting in and people who are the rejects of society that don't fit in, that people fear or think are weird or whatever. And from what I understand, when the comics first launched and for most of their history, that theme has been kept very broad because lots of different people, not just the homosexual community, but lots of different people find themselves at one time or another feeling like they don't fit in. Certainly nerds and geeks. I think depending on, where you're at, your religious beliefs can have an effect on that, depending on what the beliefs are of others around you, your political beliefs, there's all kinds of situations where people can find themselves feeling like the outcast, like the odd man out, the one that's not accepted, the one that's kind of shied away from. But it seemed to me that in X-Men 2 and 3, the writers specifically had homosexuality in mind. There was the scene at Bobby's house when his mom said, "Have you ever tried not being a mutant?" Which that kind of I don't want to say joke, but that kind of idea, that kind of thinking, in my experience, is usually connected to conversations about homosexuality, for or against it or whatever. And then also in X-Men 3, Storm really seemed to kind of be on the rampage about like, no, nobody needs a cure. There's nothing wrong with them, which I think also lends itself, to kind of some of the phrases and ideas that I hear expressed in the conversation about homosexuality. But this movie broadens the theme. It doesn't seem to have any kind of homosexual community agenda or political agenda, any kind of specific agenda. I think it wisely broadens it out to deal with just the general broad theme that X-Men deals with so well, of feeling like you don't fit in with society in general. And since so many different kinds of people can find themselves feeling that way, I think that was a great choice to kind of broaden it out like that. I hope that... oh, no, wait, no, I was reading my notes wrong. I don't hope anything. Hope, though, as an idea, is more frequently considered the quintessential human characteristic in sci-fi or fantasy. I don't know if you've noticed that. I've noticed that in The Matrix. I've noticed that in Farscape, that at one point or another, humans seem to be identified as being these hopeful creatures like that. Is their that's their greatest strength, or whatever. And the same thing is kind of going on in this movie. They bring up hope as this idea that it's part of our humanity. It's a valuable part of our humanity. It's what brings us through the tough times. Young Xavier in this movie is told to essentially hold on to hope to get through some difficulties. And whenever I hear that in a movie or fiction of any kind, I have to ask, well, why? Hope in what? What do you mean hope? Hope in just hope? Or just are we just telling them, just kind of fool yourself into thinking things will get better? There's no reason to think things will get better, but just kind of do that. Think that they'll get better for no reason. And I'm just like, what the crap, really? I think we ought to hope in what's true. We ought to look around what's true, and if there's any reasons for hope, then it makes sense, and it's good to have hope. And that's the kind of hope that has staying power even through the difficult times. Whereas if we're just trying to kind of fool ourselves through the power of positive thinking, man, that is going to break out from under you. Even so, young Xavier is told in this movie that hope will help him through the difficulty of bearing the pain of others. That's kind of a stumbling block where he's like, I can't go any further. It's just too much for me. And he's told by another wiser character to basically hang on to hope, that hope will help him bear that difficulty of bearing the pain of others. And that idea really resonated with me as I personally think of investing in relationships that are difficult or draining. As a specifically introverted geek, even though I can kind of turn on what seems like extroversion maybe to you, I'm very introverted. I get recharged by being alone, by myself, and when I'm with people, even people I enjoy being with, there's a little tank that's slowly being depleted, sometimes quickly being depleted. And so when I think about investing in the lives of others, or investing in a relationship that is kind of difficult or draining or something like that, I can just be like, oh my gosh, why should I do that? Why should I put myself through that? And hope is the answer. But by contrast, I think believers have a concrete reason for hope. Romans 8:28 says, and you guys know this, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. Revelation 21:4 says, he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more, neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. So one day God is going to quarantine evil. He's going to remove all evil from the lives of all who allow him to, and quarantine those who don't. And all the pain and difficulty that we endure now will be shown to be a contributing element in something amazing and good that God brings about in the future. So there are great concrete, real reasons to willingly embrace discomfort in relationship with others now. And I don't think that was a message of the movie, but that's something that just kind of the movie generated in my mind. So I don't think the movie is going to be one that is going to stimulate a whole lot of thought. There's stuff there to think about and process if you're looking, or if you want to think about those kinds of things. But I don't think the movie does a whole lot of that on its own. In summary, guys, this movie was, in many ways, more than I hoped for. It was fantastic, a great experience, immensely satisfying ending that I'm not going to tell you anything about. but it's immensely satisfying. And they can take the series freaking anywhere now, you know? And I don't know how many more movies they're going to make. I would guess, I mean, I haven't been keeping up with the rumors. I would guess that they're going to do one or two more X-Men movies, but man. And if you stick around till the very end of the credits, there is a shawarma, a bonus scene that sets up the next movie. So if you have any doubt about what the next movie is going to be about, stick around for the shawarma. And if you're an X-Men fan, you'll be like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I want that movie freaking yesterday. This movie was great, left me wanting more. It had some flaws, but I had an easy time overlooking them. Oh man, I cannot wait for that next movie to come out. Meantime, I'm gonna go read me some Ultimate X-Men comics, maybe bust out the 90s animated series. This movie is rated PG-13 for sequences of intense sci-fi violence and action, some suggestive material, nudity, and language. And the nudity is basically just Hugh Jackman's butt. Quality. I give this quality score of 9.0 out of 10 and a relevance score of 7.0 out of 10. All right, well, guys, please do like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff. It really will help me out to keep making more of these and know that there's interest in this. Also, please leave comments below about what you liked or what you would like to see, except for better editing. That's not going to happen. I'm still adjusting to this new webcam that I just started using last time. I tried to adjust the picture a little bit so you can let me know if it's improved. I'm hearing some stuff in the headphones off to my side here that tell me that I might be kind of, my sound might be clipping or kind of, you know, overblowing a little bit. So hopefully not, but I'll try to give some attention to that if that's the case after I listen back to it. Let's see here. For more information about our scoring system, tons of other content, community, all kinds of good stuff, visit ChristianGeekCentral.com. I hope you'll come and join us there soon as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. All right, this is the awkward part. I got to pull up the camera software and